This is a great lesson, Jim. You know what? I'm going to do my best to simplify this because this is actually one of my favorite books, and this is I'm going to do a lot of reading this morning because ultimately the title of this morning's lesson is Jesus' ancestry. So technically let's all make it clear. We know who Jesus' father was. We know, right? God sent his only begotten son, right? And we knew his mother was Mary, right? But we also knew his stepfather. Stepdad. What do you call that? What would Joseph be referred to? He pretty much was his legal father anyway, right? If we go by paper, right? I mean, for someone who didn't know, they were totally in the dark. So a lot of the ancestry we read about in the Bible, they actually document Jesus's, from way back, right? The generations of people that were, right, born into this world that ultimately came to be, say, the kin of Joseph or even the kin of Mary, right? And so then a lot of times they refer to the ancestry of Jesus as those or that chain of people, right? That were a critical part that God put in place, made special plans, right? In order to make a perfect life for Jesus here, if you call that perfect, all right? The story of Ruth is where a lot of this, I'm not saying where it begins, but the story of Ruth is a love story. Absolutely the greatest, shortest book you could read. Matter of fact, you could go home after church today and read the whole thing. And I may read a lot of it myself here today. But Ruth was a Moabite. Okay? Anyone ever heard that word? Moabite? Or Ammonite, which would be the cousins to the Moabites. And then you have the Israelites. Well, you got the Moabites, you got the Ammonites. Well, they're actually cousins to the Israelites. And they actually ended up kind of being somewhat enemies to the Israelites, right? Because on their journey from Egypt towards and into the promised land, these Moabites were troublemakers, right, for the Israelites. Now, I'm going to give Nancy all the detail I can here about these folks. But Sam, if you have that picture, I'm going to try to help here real quick and get started because this is great. Up here we see Bethlehem. This is the Jordan River right here, that line right there. And you see this place called Gad and Reuben. Well, those were a couple of the boys from the 12 tribes of Israel. They came back across, or they didn't come across, they never went across, right? But there's this place here called Moab, another place up here called Ammon. There's a place here called Edom. We've talked about Edom before in the past. You remember who the Edomites were descended from? Jacob, Esau, right? Edomites are from, Esau, twin of Jacob, the Israelite, right? But these other places here, Moab and Ammon, they were descendants of Lot. You remember Abraham? Long before the Israelites ever got to Egypt, right? Remember Abraham when he left his home country and he took his wife Sarah and his nephew Lot? Remember they got to a point where they said, there's so many sheep and got so much work to do, and there's this so limited pasture, and and our men are fighting over who's got the best territory, and we'll just separate. So Abraham said, pick your favorite place. And Lot says, I'll go there. And Lot chose to go down to Sodom and Gomorrah. Right? That's a whole nother lesson itself, right? But Lot was a nephew of Abraham. Well, remember, Sodom and Gomorrah got wiped out for their sin, right? Demolished. Lot and his daughters and wife escaped. But his wife, remember, she turned her back and God turned her into what? Pillar of salt. But him and his daughters went on. Unfortunately, Lot and his daughters had children. The Moabites were one of those descendants. The Ammonites were the other. So the Moabites, being, like family, right? The Israelites come navigating through the territory, right? Remember, they could have just probably been to the Promised Land in a couple days, but it took them 40 years. So God could teach them. By the time they finally got around here and they get into fellowship with their cousins, the Moabites began to try to cause problems for the Israelites, right? One of them was this pagan god they referred to as Balaam. You ever talked about Baal or Balaam, right? In other words, Lot knew, or he should have known, a little bit about God, right? Just from hanging out with Abraham all those years. But his people, right, over the course of time, this wasn't just like a couple weeks later, right? Several years later. Right? They began to try to get Baal to curse the Israelite people. Right? So the Moabites, whatever, became quite a disappointment for God, right? Of what God was trying to achieve here. And even to the point where God put a curse. Curse is not the word. I would say God put a restriction, right, on the Israelite people, saying, don't marry those Moabite women. At least for 10 years. Meaning what? In other words, if you've been 10 generations, I'm sorry, not 10 years, 10 generations, right? Saying that, if you were born a Moabite and you had a grandchild and a great-grandchild and a great-grandchild and a great-grandchild and a great-grandchild up to 10 generations, then it was okay. On the other hand, marrying a Moabite woman was forbidden by God. Today's lesson begins in, at least my lesson today, in Moab. There was a guy named Elimelech, and he was married, and he had a wife. Her name was Naomi. And Naomi had 2 sons, and there was a famine in Bethlehem. And they left Bethlehem and went to Moab to work. Now, all I know as far as work is concerned is I know, sometimes when we don't have jobs, we have to go somewhere and get some work, right? Sometimes we have to pick up and leave. But anyway, I don't know what it was exactly that Elimelech did for a living, but he apparently went there to help get food for his family. So Elimelech and his wife Naomi, they're over there. They've got their 2 kids. They've left Bethlehem, and of all things, Israelites go into Moab. Doesn't sound like a good recipe. But while they're there, Elimelech, his name, he dies. And they have 2 sons, and the 2 sons grow up and they get married. Guess what they do? Just guess. Marry those Moabite women. You believe that? It's like marrying someone from Kentucky. Anyway, 10 years or so down the road, those guys die. Those boys die. So now think about this. This is Naomi. She's an older lady. She has raised 2 sons. They're married. I wrote this down as Oprah. It's her name was Orpah. Orpah was one of them's name. The other one's name was Ruth. So there's 2 sister-in-laws of Naomi's. Now Naomi, really, when she lost her husband, she lost pretty much her financial income, right? But she has 2 sons. And the expectation of family when there's a widow involved is what? Take care of them. So scripturally speaking, if we step outside, right? If you got a widow in your family, you better be taking care of her or you're what? Bible calls you what? Imbecile. Take care of your widows. Well, guess what? Her 2 boys died. Her husband died. She's left with nothing. Okay? The only thing Naomi has is back home in Bethlehem, Elimelech might have had a little bit of land, right? Which he had to leave. Now, technically having land is not really, doesn't sound like that great of a deal, right? But what happens is, if you've got land, you can sell it. Sell it, you get some income, right? Naomi decides to go back home. And she's got these 2 daughters, right? Her son's husbands, right? That say, I'll go with you, right? Naomi says, no, you stay here. You're young. You're young. Why would you want to go with an old lady over into Bethlehem, right? Of all places, Bethlehem, who does not necessarily take too kindly to you Moabite women, right? Go on, remarry, have children, live a good life. One of them, Orpah, says, okay. I mean, this was a sad time, right? I'm going to read it. It's a sad time, but I'll go back. And Ruth decides, no, I won't. She says, I'll go where you go. I'll serve your gods. So today's lesson is beginning the story about one of the ancestors of Joseph. And let's begin reading, because I'm going to read a lot here. Ruth, chapter 1. And I'm going to read a lot, and so just bear with me if you can. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled. So this is before the kings, before King Saul, before King David. Remember, we just had judges. They didn't have kings. He said, there was a famine in the land. He said, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab. They're talking about Elimelech, okay? So he and his wife and his 2 sons, and the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife is Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. These were Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah, which is Bethlehem, okay? And this is somewhere up here, there's a line, like right through here, that makes Judah the southern kingdom. And they came, which yet is not just the southern kingdom at this time, right? Meaning it has not separated from the northern kingdom. He said, they came into the country of Moab and continued there. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her 2 sons, with her 2 sons. And they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of one was Orpah, the name of the other Ruth, and they dwelled there about 10 years. Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them, and the woman, was left of her 2 sons and her husband. She was left with nothing. Not there. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab. For she had heard in the country of Moab how the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. So what's she saying? She had heard in Moab that back home the Lord was providing needs, goods, food for his people. She said, I'm going to go, right? Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, this is Naomi, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return unto the land of Judah. And Naomi said unto her daughters-in-law, says, go return, each to her mother's house. Meaning, go back to your mom's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as ye have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that ye may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. So this is a sad time, okay? I mean, we have to take it easy on Orpah here. She doesn't go, but she's definitely impacted by all this sorrow. They said unto her, surely we will return with thee unto thy people. And Naomi said, turn again, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Now that's kind of a neat statement, if you don't understand, culturally speaking, right? They married her sons. She has no more sons. So why would they hang out? To marry Naomi's next son? Well, Naomi she's done having sons. God made that decision for her a long time ago. He says, turn again, my daughters, go your way. He said, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, if I should have a husband also tonight, and should should also bear sons. He said, would you tarry for them till they were grown? I mean, you're a big girl now. You're going to wait till they're men and then marry them? She says, nay, my daughter. Says, for it grieved me much for your sakes that the land of the Lord is gone out against me. They lifted up their voice and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave unto her. And she said, behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people, and unto her gods. Remember I said they're pagans, the Moabites. He says, return thou after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth said, entreat me not to leave thee, or return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go. And where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God be my God. And thy God be my God. What's she saying? I'm going back. Your home is my home. Your God is my God. I'm not leaving. Okay? She said, where thou diest, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more so, if aught but death part thee and me. When she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left speaking unto her. Meaning what? She dropped it. Dropped the subject. Okay? So they went until they came to Bethlehem. And it came to pass when they were come to Bethlehem that all the city was moved about them. And they said, is this Naomi? Oh, I'm from, we say Naomi, not Naomi. Right, Judy? Naomi. You did? I went to school with Naomi. Is this Naomi? Naomi? And she said unto them, call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. She says, I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me home again empty. Why then call ye me Naomi, seeing the Lord hath testified against me, and the Almighty hath afflicted me? So she's kind of a little bit in her, feeling sorry for herself, right? I mean, I'm not saying that if I was in her shoes, I wouldn't feel a bit, depressed, right? So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab. They came to Bethlehem in the beginning of barley harvest. So when is that? It's in the fall, right? So in the fall, they come back, her and Ruth, and the people greet them. And the story continues, right? Let me read on, because this is really easy reading. Has anyone not read this book? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand. Yeah? Do you want to teach? It's a good lesson. Now think about these two ladies, both widows now, with no income, with no immediate or close family. And Naomi had a kinsman of her husband's, a mighty man of wealth. Kinsman of her husband's, meaning some relative of her husband. A wealthy guy, as far as wealth is concerned. I mean, apparently he doesn't sit in office and twiddle his thumbs, because we're going to read about him being in the barn threshing corn. He says, a mighty man of wealth of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi, said, let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him, in whose sight I shall find grace. And she said unto her, go, my daughter. So what's Ruth saying? I'm young. Right. You know how when these guys, combines go through the field, and then they make their curve, and they have to turn around and go back. Well, they used to do that before they had GPS. Now I don't know what. I think they just pick themselves up and turn and go down. They used to turn, and every time you have turns, you'd have places where they'd leave corn, or they'd knock it down, and they wouldn't pick it up. As a matter of fact, where I live right now, it used to be the same, right? You go out there, you go on the corners, you could see 4 ears of corn right there. I mean, remember, Angela? We could even I could have picked up sometimes a pickup truck load of corn and taken it home and just shoveling it out. Yeah? Well, this is gleaning, right? After the harvest, anything that's left, they can come through and pick it up. So these women, or handmaids they're referring to them, they'll be out there. I don't know if they got bags or they got long skirts, and they'll be picking up the corn. And they'll be taking it home to feed their families, right? And so I guess there's maybe some rules of whose field you can glean or not, right? But Boaz apparently was a farmer or had some land, and Ruth says, allow me, Naomi, to go out and glean his fields. Okay? Verse 4. Behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said unto the reapers. Now the reapers are the guys that are taking in the corn. They're driving the combines, right? Their job is to get the corn out of the field, right? He said, the Lord be with you. And they answered him, the Lord bless thee. Then said Boaz unto his servant that was set over the reapers, he said, whose damsel is this? I mean, apparently he has some that should be there and shouldn't be there, and he recognized someone new that showed up, right? At least that's the way I interpret it. And the servant that was set over the reapers answered and said, it is the whatever the word should be said, Moabitish damsel that came back with Naomi out of the country of Moab. got a Moab out here in your field. And she said, I pray you, let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came and hath continued even from the morning until now, that she tarried a little in the house. Now you order the sheaves. Bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves. That means they're the good stuff, right? Bringing in the crops, right? I would think. I never brought in any sheaves, but take my word for it. Sheaves are a good thing. You know what? You know what? I don't know. It was barley, right? I've never raised barley, but apparently, I'm assuming the sheaves are the part you want to keep. And I don't know what all you do with barley other than make alcohol, which is not necessarily, but they make probably bread, stuff. I don't know. Jeanetta's not here. She'd probably tell us what the goods of anybody know?
I read it in some of these new like nutritional bars and stuff.
High fiber, good soup. Okay, that's my guess, Nancy.
We need to find more.
Yeah, we do. Okay. So anyway, he's telling Boaz about this Ruth girl. He says, then said Boaz unto Ruth, he said, hearest thou not, my daughter? He said, go not, get this, go not to glean in another field. Neither go from hence. He said, but abide here, fast by my maidens. What are you saying? So I'm not saying that Boaz has fallen in love with Ruth at this point in time. I don't know that. The Bible doesn't tell me that. Other than the fact that the guy told him that Ruth had come home with Naomi, right? From Moab. Now, does Boaz know that Naomi's his cousin or relative? I'm thinking he does. Let's hang on here. He said, let thine eyes be on the field that they do reap, and go you after them. Okay? Have I not charged the young men that they shall not touch thee? What did he say? Guys, see her? Hands off. Eyes off. She's reaping from my field. And when thou art athirst, he's talking to Ruth, go unto the vessels and drink of that which the young men have drawn. And she fell on her face. This is Ruth. Bowed herself to the ground, said unto him, why have I found grace in thine eyes that thou shouldest take knowledge of me, seeing I am a stranger? Boaz answered and said unto her, it hath fully been showed me all that thou hast done unto thy mother. Who's that? Naomi. Right. In law, since the death of thine husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother and the land of thy nativity, and art come unto a people which thou knowest not heretofore. The Lord recompense thy work, and a full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust. Meaning what? She said, I'll go where you go. Your God will be my God. Under whose wings thou art come to trust. Then she said, let me find favor in thy sight, my Lord, for that thou hast comforted me. And for, and spoken friendly unto thy handmaid, said, though I be not like unto one of thine handmaids. So I don't know. I don't know if he can tell by her looks, or her skin, or her hair, or her dress. But he knew she was different the minute he saw her. Boaz said unto her at mealtime, come thou hither, eat of the bread, dip thy morsel in the vinegar. She sat beside the reapers, and he reached her parched corn, and she did eat, and was suffused and left. Suffused meaning what? She was full. Yeah, good thing. Talking about her. Huh? No, this is a really great story. Hang on. At this point, he just says, when you're done, when you're hungry, sit down, eat, drink. When she was risen up to glean, I guess it's to go back to work, right? Boaz commanded his young men, saying, let her glean even among the sheaves, and reproach her not. What's he saying? Yeah. Why should she go around and pick up the scraps? Send her into the corn. I say corn, huh? The good stuff. Probably won't even have to bend over. I'm just thinking about. Rebuke her not. He said, so she gleaned in the field until even, beat out that she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. There you go, Nancy.
26 quarts.
Is that right?
Yep.
That's an ephah?
That's what I got wrote down in my Bible, so it came from Mark or someone.
Whoa.
Someone I knew.
Well, because she beat it out. That's what he said. Anyway, she took it up, went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. And she brought forth and gave to her that she had reserved after she was suffused. So what happened? She took it home to her mother-in-law, Naomi, right? And provided her with what she had left over from, I guess, picking and threshing and all that good stuff. And her mother-in-law said unto her, where hast thou gleaned today? And where wrougest thou? Blessed be he that did take knowledge of thee. And she showed her mother-in-law with whom she had wrought, and said, the man's name whom I wrought today is Boaz. Okay, let's reflect real quick. Boaz was a near kinsman of Elimelech. Naomi married Elimelech. But now Naomi was back home with no husband, no sons. And then there's Boaz, a wealthy man. At least he's a guy who worked for his dinner. Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, said, blessed be he of the Lord, who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. And Naomi said unto her, said, the man is near of kin unto us, one of our next kinsmen. Right? I mean, she married into the family. Oh, Ruth, her and Naomi are attached by marriage. And Ruth the Moabitess said, he said unto me also, thou shalt keep fast by my young men until they have ended all my harvest. Meaning what? As long as there's stuff to harvest, be there. And it's yours. Okay? And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, that you go out with his maidens, that they meet thee not in any other field. It says, So she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz to glean unto the end of barley harvest and end of wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. Okay, I got a lot to say and read, and I'm running out of time. Okay, so let me skip through chapter. I'm going to skip through chapter 10. I'm going to tell you about it. Naomi has a plan. Okay, and she says, you need to approach this Boaz guy. And what I want you to do is I want you to go up to where he's at working today. You know, he's out in the hay mow, beating the barley. And at some point he's going to just get tired and he's going to sit down. And Naomi says, go up there to where he rests. Uncover his feet. Now, why would that be important? I mean, if you were asleep and it was cold and someone came and uncovered your feet, some of you would wake right up. Okay? Nothing perverted about this at all. This is the approach that Naomi is telling her to take. When he's asleep, go up to him, uncover his feet, and lay down at his feet. Well, first of all, for a man to wake up and a woman laying at his feet is in the barn, it's probably not necessarily it doesn't look too good, right? Boaz wakes up and says, "Ah!" Right? Who is this? I got to read this part. Verse 9.